So even then, I start from the basic level and we cover most of the levels, with the final level being either you being confident enough to clear interviews or taking the TIBCO certification. So just to speak on this matter, so I'm very proud to say this. Like the last two batches, so TIBCO has been from this year onwards. TIBCO has been arranging the certification drives. So one of the certification drives this year was on 28th April. The last one was, if I remember correctly, on 23rd June this year. So in both those certification drives, we had students from our two batches participating, and we have 100% record. So like all of the students who appeared on the exams cleared that. Okay, so that is something that I'm very proud to announce that. So as I said, like just to bring in the context, so what we are aiming at is more of a hands-on based training, and like learning all the concepts mostly by hands-on, and preparing you either to be confident enough to attend and clear any interviews in Bw6 or C, or clearing the certification itself. So with that, I'll just start with the introduction. So this, as I said, like, this is I didn't update the slide, so like it lists my experience as 10 years, but it's currently 12 years. So as I said, like I've been working in exclusively on various TIBCO stack of products, and specifically my work area revolves around TIBCO integration with hybrid cloud deployments and hybrid integration. So that includes Bw6C and like associated products like EMS, RV, etc. I worked extensively on BW5 as well. So in course of our discussion, we will be drawing some examples and comparisons between the Bw6 and Bwc implementation compared to that of Bw5 implementation. So even if you have no exposure to any TIBCO products prior to this, or if you do not have exposure in Bw6 or C, be rest assured that we will be starting from the basic level, and you're free to ask your questions. So I generally encourage a more interactive class rather than me just giving the lectures. So we have interactive classes where you ask questions actively, and the curriculum of the course, that is also decided based on the student preference. So if in case if I see that most of you are interested more in learning the product rather than going for the certification, the course would be a little bit different. I will include more use cases from the actual hands-on. If you have aspirations to clear the certification, then we'll have a different setup. So based on that, and also sometimes what I request I get students are appearing for interviews, or they need some urgent topic to be discussed based on their project requirement. So I take due account of that, and we follow a general pattern. So I'll give you the slides which you can refer, and we'll discuss the concepts with the hands-ons in class. But as I said, if there is a sudden requirement of a student to urgently address some topic, then also take that into account. So we will take those topics on priority. So just giving a heads up, overall how we proceed. So as I said, during the course of the class, I will be handing out the slides which would have the concepts, and based on the concepts, we will do extensive hands-on. So I'll hand out the projects as well, whichever I do in class, so that you can readily refer to created projects, as well as I will send out a couple of POCs for you to do it. If you have any doubts, you can definitely get back to me and we can all discuss as it. So first of all, coming to the overview of the course, as it's given in the slide, it's around 35 hours of online classes. In case if you are if the majority of the batch is inclined for certification, then this course duration would increase. So we'll need around minimum 5 more classes to discuss certification specific things. So that will be decided based on the course of as per the batch preference. So that apart, overall we keep 35 hours of classes, but if, in case if there is some issue, we get stuck, or some extra explanation needs to be done, then we do that. So overall you can expect that it would be around 40 classes, so 1 hour per day, Monday to Friday. We don't work on weekends, so I'll give you the slides and the POCs over on Friday so that you can walk over the weekend and we can discuss on Monday. So this is how we actually proceed. Coming to topics, basically. Okay, so before that, like overall, whatever we discussed, if you have any questions, any doubts, any confirmation you need, please feel free to ask. Coming to our Bw6 course. So first of all, like as I said, like so this slide is basically gives you the overview of whatever we are doing and whatever course like Bw6, whatever like technical things we need to know about Bw6 and C. So I won't exactly stick to the slide. I would be like giving an overview. If you have any doubts regarding any content of the slide or whatever I say, please feel free to ask. Okay. So now coming to the Bw6 and C development first. So the way we structure our course is we cover the development first for Bw6 and C together. Okay, because as I said, 95% is common. 5% which is different, I will point that out. Once we are done with the development part, we proceed with the Bw6 administration, where I will show you like where any project, any like service-based, REST or SOAP-based project that we create in Bw6 during our course, we will go and deploy that in the app space. We'll run and like check if that is working or not. So that thing end-to-end creation of app space, domains, etc., everything we will do. And after that Bw6 admin is completed, we will proceed with the Bwc deployment. So in Bwc deployment, as I said, like apart from TIBCO, we also need to understand a bit of Docker, a bit of image creation, what are the principles. Then we need to understand like what is needed to deploy the application as a container on cloud, what is container, etc. We will see that. As well as we'll touch a little bit on Kubernetes, just to give you a flavor of like exactly what are the most popular ways to like control your application on the cloud. So those things we will cover as a part of our course. Okay. And lastly, like when we are done, since we like TIBCO hasn't announced any certification days next for the next quarter, so after the course is over, means after before the last class, I'll hand out sample questions from my certification exams this year. So I think that would help you. Like you probably get at least a bunch of questions coming from there, because like this time I shared with the students, so they told me that most of the questions have common from those question set also. So like that would be an added advantage for you if in case you want to go for the certification. Okay. So that apart. So coming to the actual subject. So why, first of all, before actually going into the development part of Bw6, we need to understand like what was the requirement, or like why is actually TIBCO which had this flagship market leader product of TIBCO BW5 in the integration space at least. Why is it like trying to move to the Bw6 and to the Bwc cloud? So to like understand that as a background, so we can go back about say 4 or 5 years. So around 2014 or 15, so TIBCO's this BW5 was one of the market leaders in the integration space. Okay, because like the GUI concept that TIBCO had was like a rarity at that time in the market. But slowly, like since the integration space is very agile, okay, so a lot of players have a lot of products coming in, things being updated every day. So there was a shift in the cloud, in the client mentality. So initially, the client were more like happy with the traditional approach. That is, they wanted to deploy their applications on-premise. That is, they had some set of servers which they are set up in their own domains. They had their admin team who would manage those servers, and like in those servers, they would have the TIBCO BW engine running in the background. They would set up the TIBCO admin and deploy that. Okay, so that was the BW5 setup. Now, with the coming of this cloud disruptions, where we have the Amazon and the Microsoft Azure as the main players, what the cloud platforms were offering were basically maintenance of all these servers without the overhead for the client. So what that would mean is the servers would be maintained on cloud itself, and the cloud providers would be responsible for providing the services, ensuring the services are always up and accessible, as well as scaling up and scaling it down on demand. So in case like if you think from the business perspective, that actually makes sense, because suppose say a retail client in the US. So for them during the Thanksgiving, it's a huge traffic rush, but the rest of the year, it's most of it like it's basically a lean period. So based on that high-end traffic rush during the Thanksgiving, the client has to increase its capacity. But just for ensuring that only for those 1 week of Thanksgiving, for which they would ensure they would get high traffic, it's not like pocket friendly for the client to opt for a higher number of servers throughout the year, because that would basically be wasted. So what they would do is, like, rest of the year. Okay, just interrupting. So I just got a ping from Kiran. So Dev and Shekhar, could you please share your details to Kiran so that she can contact you? Okay, so we'll now proceed. So as I was saying, so based on this scenario, since most of the year is a lean period for the client, except that particular Thanksgiving weekend. So what they do is, like, it is not pocket friendly for them to have the higher number of servers registered throughout the year, because that would be a waste. So what they do instead is, for the rest of the year, say they opt for 2 or 3 servers as is necessary for their average minimum traffic. But during the Thanksgiving, they can scale up their number of servers from, say, 3 to 10 based on the traffic coming in, and they can do it dynamically. This is the main advantage of cloud platform. So it can be scaled up and scaled down on demand. And also the client doesn't have the overhead to maintain the servers. Day-to-day maintenance of the servers, checking of the jobs, checking of the health, etc. That is all taken care of by the cloud platform team. So the client doesn't have any overhead. They can concentrate only on the business. So since that makes sense, so the client was interested to shift to cloud. Okay, but initially, coming out of this all these years of traditional mindset, so they were initially not very keen to migrate entirely to the cloud. So what TIBCO did was to, TIBCO was basically a little late in jumping into the bandwagon for this cloud-based deployment. So what TIBCO did was, at the initial start, like say 2014 and 15, they introduced 2 products. One was Bw6 and the other was Bwc. So since the client mentality at that time was more of progressing with the BW5 setup, so TIBCO wanted to give that flavor to as means of this on-premise deployment, that is deployment within the premise of the client. So for that, Bw6 was suitable, and for clients who were looking to migrate to cloud, they provided the similar capability tool, but with the option to deploy on cloud. That was the Bwc, that is a container edition. Okay. Now, coming down the line, so slowly the client mentality changed, and now most of the clients, like specifically the smaller businesses, are tending to move to entire cloud-based setup. Okay, so that is why more and more clients are opting for Bwc directly without going to Bw6. But the thing is, even Bw6 can be utilized in the cloud platform. So how that is done? So cloud, as we know, cloud platform basically come in 2 flavors. So you can have an iPaaS or you can have a SaaS. So iPaaS basically means an integration platform as a service, which means that the entire platform would be given to the client. Basically, so there will be some servers which the client would buy or on lease from the client, from the cloud platform, and they can set up anything in that platform. So what they can do is, in the virtual machines, say suppose AWS platform, they purchase some servers, some machines, and there they set up their on-premise deployment setup. That is, they set up their TIBCO domain, TIBCO app space, app node, etc., and they can then deploy the Bw6 codes on that app space setup, even though that app space itself is on cloud. Okay, so that means the client is leveraging the iPaaS functionality to deploy Bw6 on the cloud platform, which is leveraging the cloud platform without moving to Bwc. But if you consider the SaaS variety of cloud offering, which is basically software as a service, that means your own software, you package that as a container, and you deploy that container on a cloud platform. So that is the usual way a cloud platform runs the applications. Okay. So these containers can be created out of any technology, not only TIBCO, Java, Node.js, anything, .NET. So any underlying technology can be packaged as a container, and that can be just run on cloud. So you can, like, instead of like buying some servers, you can like deploy your containers on the cloud platform to be run as SaaS, and you can pay as per the usage. So there is a pay per usage model for the SaaS, and for the iPaaS, it's basically lump sum payment done for buying the servers. Okay, so where the client can set up anything. So based on these two flavors, and also like nowadays, client prefer a hybrid setup. So what is a hybrid setup? And hybrid setup basically is a setup where part of the client applications are on cloud, and part of the client applications, usually the more critical and the more secure ones, they are within the client servers. Okay, and these two type of applications interact between themselves. So how that is done is like part of the like the applications which are deployed on cloud, they expose some service which either invoke or which are invoked by the applications which are on the on-premise setup of the client. Okay, so in this way, a hybrid integration is set up, which is the most common and most popular integration model currently. Okay, so TIBCO like caters to both of these. So till, like as I said, like initially going by the client preference, so TIBCO had kept these two products separate. So in like up to till 6.4, if you have ever worked or if you have chance to see, you'll see that up to 6.4, TIBCO was maintaining a product where the Bw6 was used only for deployment on AppSpace. Okay, and the Bwc till the version, I think that was before 2.3. Okay, so that version, that was being used only for deployment on cloud. So cloud deployment again has two parts. One is the general cloud deployment, that is any cloud platform, and the other one is deployment on the TIBCO cloud. Okay, so though these two options were there with Bwc, but Bw6 was used exclusively for deployment on premise. Now, as the client mindset shifted, so TIBCO also shifted their product. So currently, what we have is that this development of Bw6 and C, they were merged. So if you see the Bw6 setup and if you see the Bwc setup, you'll see that the studio version in both of them are the same. So capability wise, Bw6 and C have the same development capabilities, as well as like from Bw 6.5 onwards and the Bwc 2. I think 4 onwards, 2.4.5 onwards, what they have introduced is a concept of deployment target. So it was not there in the earlier versions. So the utility of this is that now if you like as a developer, you create a code either on the Bw6 Studio or on the Bwc Studio. Okay, so the idea is that you should not be forced to like decode your everything on the other studio. Like if you suppose want to deploy on cloud and you have already created a code on Bw6 Studio, so you do not like you should not be forced to recreate the same code again from scratch in Bwc Studio just for deploying on the cloud. So what we have from 6.5 onwards is that you have a concept of deployment target. So deployment target basically lets you choose your targeted deployment setup. So if you like, there are three options. One is the AppSpace, one is cloud, that is container, and one is TIBCO cloud. So if you set as AppSpace, then your code would be compatible to be deployed on the AppSpace, that is on premise. If you select for the same code, if you select the checkbox of container, then your code would be made compatible to be deployed on any cloud platform. And if you check the checkbox for TIBCO cloud, your code would be made compatible to deploy on TIBCO cloud. So currently the like thing works like this. So you can develop your code in any studio, Bw6 or C. Then you can choose the appropriate deployment target, and you can like if you choose the AppSpace, you can like deploy on the AppSpace using you can generate the ER and deploy on the AppSpace. Or if you choose cloud or TIBCO cloud as your deployment target, you can modify your code, you can create the applications out of it, you can create a container, and you can push it directly to cloud or the cloud platform, okay, provided you have the required access. So like TIBCO has offered this general functionality where like development is same, but the deployment part differs. So Bw6 is currently used for deployment on AppSpace, and Bwc is used for deployment on the cloud. Okay, so even though like if you create a product on if you create an application on Bw6, and that has a deployment targets set, so you can change between AppSpace and the cloud, you can actually deploy only on AppSpace in Bw6. Okay, I think rather than me explaining this, let me open the studio. I think that would be easier for you to understand as well. So currently I am opening the Bw6 studio. Okay, so after this I'll open the Bwc studio as well, and like I'll show you like mostly they are the same. So I'm creating a new workspace. So basically, like for since this is the studio for 6 and C, both are Eclipse based. So we work in a workspace rather than in individual products. So in BW5 we opened direct folder directories which would like hold only a single project at a time. But here we are opening a workspace. I can name it anything I want, and it would be dynamically created. So the workspace holds all the projects that can be created. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Let's say there's a client who doesn't want to migrate to BW6. So is there an option for
Okay.
them to use the BW5 EAR to deploy on one of the deployment targets available, like TIBCO Cloud or CE? Is it possible? So the development would remain
Actually, like
BW5.
right. So actually, this was like this is not approved by TIBCO. So like some TIBCO partners they tried this functionality. So
Okay.
this was not actually successful. So what TIBCO is saying is that like you can try, but if you like there can be issues. Which TIBCO like if you have issues in that TIBCO support won't be available. So
Oh,
you have to either migrate to 6 or C.
got it. Okay.
Yeah. And also like the libraries that you need for the cloud deployment, I don't think that would be available for 5. TIBCO has not made it available. Like TIBCO has actually deprecated this, like removed the support for BW5 from this year. So
Okay.
if your client is a registered partner of TIBCO, they would definitely suggest them to migrate either to 6 or C. So as a TIBCO developer, we need to know both of them. Okay. So this is the workspace. Okay, for Bw6. I'll just try to create one sample project and show you whatever I was like explaining. So I'll come to all these details later in this session. So we have application and application module. Both are different ways of creating the same thing. I'll stick to the application module for now. I'm naming this as test POC1. Rest of the options I'm keeping as default. But this takes a bit of time to create the project. Yeah. So the project is now created. As you can see, like there are errors because like I have not implemented anything. So this is how the process design palette looks like in Bw6. So whatever we are designing, we have to define within this box itself. We cannot go outside. So outside these white spaces, these have their own significance. Okay. So here, as I said, like suppose you create your project here, you do the design time setup, you test, everything is done. Now, if you want to select the deployment target for which to make your code compatible, you could right click on that project name, right click there. So you can see like this square brackets has the app space written. So by default, when you create a project, the project is created with the default deployment target as app space, which we can change, of course. So suppose I create this project and like everything is done. It was initially created as an app space deployment target, but due to the change requirement, I need to change the I need to deploy instead on the cloud. Okay, so I would not be required to like recreate the project. What I'll do, I'll right click on the project name. There is this configure, and we have the configure deployment target. Here you see these are the checkboxes, right? So you can select any one of them or any combination of these. So since these are checkboxes, you can even select all of them. Okay, based on your requirement. So whatever you do, your project is modified in that manner so that it would be compatible for deployment in the particular deployment target you choose. Okay, suppose I deselect this app space, which is the default for Bw6, and I choose container or TIBCO Cloud or both. What I will do, what that would do is change my project to a format which is compatible with the cloud deployment. Okay, but to deploy actually on cloud, I would need more. So this is only the design part which is made compatible to the cloud deployment. But for actual deployment, we need some like support files or library files or some certain dependencies which are provided only with Bwc. Okay. So current version of Bwc is 2.6.2 and Bw6 is 6.7. Okay. So even in the latest version, they have maintained this separation where you can create your development in any of the studios. See, both are the same. Means the same. But both. But when it comes to the actual deployment, for the cloud deployment, you have to still exclusively depend on the C Studio because those library supports which are required, those are provided with C only. And in case you need to deploy on AppSpace, you have to stick with Bw6 because the supportive those utilities, those are there only in the Bw6 installer, in the Bw6 installed environment, not in Bw6. Okay. So they have kept the like deployment portion. Okay. Now, if we consider the scenario that we were discussing, where we were creating a project on the Bw6 Studio and we want to deploy on cloud. So as I said, like after the development is done, we can change this deployment target accordingly, and it will modify our code. So what we'll do next is we will not create an ER because this ER created in Bw6 is not compatible with the ER that will be created in Bwc because it has the additional library support. So what we need to do is we need to export our code. So export means we have this option of right clicking on the project name again, and we have the option of exporting. So this will be exported, the code will be exported as a zip file, which you can open in the Bwc workspace, and then you can create the ER. So what we would do is you will create an ER which is basically compatible with the Bwc Studio because it has all those library supports, and then you can go ahead and use the utilities that are provided with Bwc to deploy that application on cloud. Okay. Conversely, if we were developing on the Bwc Studio and we had set the deployment target as app space, then we will be needed to export that project from Bwc Studio, import that in the Bw6 Studio, and create the ER, and then you use the utilities to deploy on AppSpace using these Bw6 utilities. Okay.
So Abhishek,
Is it? Yeah.
You mentioned the
So
6.4 onwards we have this. So you mentioned 6.4 onwards we have this feature to use either of the studios, but here it doesn't work, right? I mean, we still need the CE to deploy on cloud. We cannot go ahead with Bw6.7 and choose the deployment target as CE or TIBCO Cloud.
Right. So I'll show you like exactly where the difference is. Okay. So this is the studio, right? Bw6 Studio. Suppose this is 6.5. Okay. So as I said, like I can change the deployment target here. say to container, which would be the general cloud deployment. Okay. Now, this would make my code compatible with the cloud deployment, but the difference is in the installation files. So if I go, I'll show you the installation files. So this is the system file installer, the installed location, the BW home. Okay. So here, if you see, we have this BW admin and the BW agent. These are the utilities which can be run from command line. And also, like, this BW admin and BW agent are the most essential components of the app space setup. Okay. So these two are provided with the BW 6.5 setup. Now, if I go to the C home, let's see where the C is. Yeah, this is the C. This is a 2.4 version. If I go to the bin here, so you see the BW agent and the BW admin, they are not here, right? Instead, we have some extra support which we call build pack. Okay, that is downloaded separately. That is not part of this product. That has to be downloaded separately from the e-delivery side of TIBCO, provided you have the sorry guys, I lost audio in between. So like, can you tell me like how long like I was audible, like whatever you could hear, make out?
You said
Yeah,
that it will be downloaded from the TIBCO server. The package is not available.
the build pack.
Build pack,
The
yes.
build pack, yes. The build pack would be available only if you have a paid subscription, and that is not a part of the product installation. Okay, so that has to be downloaded separately for the specific portion of BWC. So for 2.4.5 there would be a separate build pack. For 2.6 there will be a separate build pack. So you have to download accordingly. Okay, so because of this dependency, like, we actually cannot deploy on the specific targets, even though we can make our code compatible in either of the studios. Okay, so this is the difference. Now I'll show you the C setup also, like just to compare like how these are very similar. In the meantime, like if you have any other doubts, please feel free to ask. I'm opening any like sample workspaces. Okay, so like allowing for the time for this studio to open, let me just go over the slide quickly. Okay, so this was like something I was already explaining. Like, we have all these three options as deployment targets, which we can set. So these are the Bw6 features, which like include more of a REST native function. So REST native means like REST is inbuilt in TIBCO in Bw6. So like 6 and C. So in Bw5 or in like implementing REST, that was a big headache. because that had to be included as a plugin, and like for testing that was a nightmare. You have to set up various different components just to do a little bit of testing. Now, since the cloud platforms all like prefer this REST type of service exposure compared to the SOAP, so this is a must-have feature. So Bw6 is like aptly like has this feature set up. So it's just in a few clicks you can create your own REST service and have the deployed and tested. Okay, so that makes it much easier to work on these newer features in 6 and C. So like mobile integration or the cloud integration becomes much more easier when you're working in 6 and C. Okay. So these are like some of the additional features. This is a screenshot of the debugger, that is where we do the local testing. This is more or less similar to the BW5, but like you get a lot of more details here. Like these are the jobs which are running. These are the individual activity job data. This you can see on the right hand side is a feature that Bw6 offers, where you can from the code itself you can directly you can from the studio itself, if you have the connections, you can directly deploy on the app space. This actually shows you in BW. This is basically a service setup. So this is a SOAP service that has been set up in Bw6, and this is a REST service. So as I said, like both of these services are similar in implementation, and it's very easier. With a few clicks you can create your own service and test them as well. So TIBCO has this Swagger engine inbuilt within the TIBCO workspace. So like you can test it when you create your REST service, you can easily test it from the Swagger UI from the browser. Okay, so we'll do that as well from in our sections. So these are, like I said, like Bw6 implementations. So deployment, BW admin, and the TA. These are the two ways. Like TA is the GUI, and in between there is the BW agent, which I was showing in the installation code. So all of them constitute the Bw6 deployment. Whereas for the Bwc deployment, we have a containerized deployment where we create containers. This is that deployment target we saw, and we have this build pack for Docker or Cloud Foundry. So based on your containerization technology, whichever you're opting for, TIBCO supports Bwc supports these two, Docker and Cloud Foundry, of which Docker is the most popular. So based on whichever containerization technology you are going to use, you have to download that particular build pack for your particular product version. So for TIC 2.6.2, there would be a particular build pack that you need to download from eDelivery and use that to create your base image of your application and subsequently deploy on the cloud. Okay, so this is like in a nutshell exactly how we do the containerization. This is the application archive. We can push it directly to the TIBCO cloud from the studio, since it is TIBCO to TIBCO. If we are opting for any general cloud deployment, we have to like create that application, encapsulate that application into a container, which is done either by Docker or by Cloud Foundry. And after this containerization, we deploy these containers into the into any of the cloud platforms. Okay. So that's about the slide. Now coming to the studio, this is the C workspace. Okay. So you see that basically is the same thing, where the default this app space, default deployment target is set as container. And here also, like in the same way, we can right click, configure, and change our deployment targets. Okay. So development wise, 95% the same. Whatever is different, I'll point it out. Okay. But since the development part and the studio wise both are similar, so we'll continue side by side and like together the developments of 6 and C. Okay. And just one other thing I wanted to show you. So this is the C installation folder, C home, right? If you look at the studio, it's 4.0. Now, if I go to the Bw6 setup studio, it's also the same. Okay, so that's why like the development prior to 6.5 version, that development were bit development in different in 6 and C, but from 6.5 onwards in 6 and 2.4.5 onwards or 2.4 onwards in C, they have merged these developments. So the studios are the same in both cases, only the deployment support, those things differ, as I said. Okay, so that's it about like the general overview. So now coming to your questions. So if you have any doubts, anything you want me to explain, or like you want to ask, please feel free to ask. Okay.
Abhishek, Saswat this side.
Yes.
As I told earlier, right, कि in my company the codes are in 5.13. Okay, so
Okay.
how is
Okay.
possible means we can push the code to 6.x or we can build from scratch? How it will work?
Okay. So coming to that, so we have a setup in TIBCO itself. So if you see, so here this is the 6 workspace. Okay. So if you see this project, and here we have the option of migrate PW projects. Okay. So when you migrate to Visualpath project, so this is also one part that we will cover in a course. So this migrating, this is like very important. Like as I said, like this is a very common use case where most of the clients have the work codes in BW13 and 5.13 and they want to migrate. So this utility that Bw6 provides, this is available both in 6 and as well as the CE Studio. Now, this migration will not be a complete migration in the sense that this will be an as-is migration. So like just comparing, so since BW5 does not have any standard setup, so you can have any folders, you can give any names to them, and you can keep any resources there. Okay, in BWC or 6 that is not the case. So since this is a Maven compliant, because this is based on Eclipse, okay, so we have specific folders for specific resources. So this processes folder can only hold BW processes. Service descriptors can hold only visuals. Resources can hold only the connection resources. Okay. So this type of setup will not be there, will not be done as a part of this as-is migration. Also, there will be reference breaks. So all of that you need to take care of. So BW, what this migration will do is it will convert your project, that is these processes, activities, and resources, etc., into their corresponding BW6 versions. Okay, that much it will do. But you, in order to actually use that code, you have to reorganize. That is, you have to move this, like you have to set up, like suppose you have a folder, say shared resources 1, suppose, where you have the shared connections. You have to move those resources from the shared resources 1 into this resources folder, and then delete that shared resources folder. So once you remove that, there will be multiple reference breaks at multiple levels. So there can be process to schema levels of reference break. There can be schema to schema reference break. There can be process to resources reference break. All these things have to be taken care of post the default migration. Okay, so this is the pros and the cons of the migration, this auto migration. Now, if you want to develop from scratch, then you can do that, but that would be time consuming because you have to create everything from scratch. But that would be a actually a better approach, because what TIBCO does is the auto migration, it will create that it will just create the replica of the schema, say as they are in BW5 in BW6. Okay, so all those schemas, like for each projects, like say in BW5, I give you a specific example. So in BW5 projects, we are usually providing in the start and the end activities, we're usually providing hard-coded inline schemas. So when you convert that in BW6, so BW6 only supports globally defined schemas. That is the .xsd ones. It doesn't support these inline schemas. So what that conversion will do is it will create one XSD schema for each process start and end. So there will be a lot of schemas for that, but you don't really need that because you can reuse them. Okay, so if you create from scratch, it would be efficient, but that would be time consuming. And if you go for this automated migration, it will be faster but there will be a lot of after work that would be involved. Okay, so both approaches have their pros and cons, and you have to decide based on your priority. But as I have seen multiple customers, they prefer to use this auto migration to migrate from 5 to 6 and then reorganize everything to create a usable code.
Okay, and what about this thing, the pellets which are using a 5.13, both all are same, or added new pellets in 6?
See, palettes are more or less similar, but definitely not all palettes in BW5 are supported in BW6. So when you do the auto migration, in case suppose you are using some activity which is not supported here, so like it will be shown as an error. You have to replicate, replace that with a compatible activity of BW6, or like say there is in BW5 we have a generate error, right? In Bw6 we don't have a generate error, but we have a throw activity which does the same thing. So if that is the case, then BW would itself convert that from that generator activity into a throw activity. But if you have a custom custom function, that would be converted into a custom function in a plugin project that is called in Bw6. So you have to relate that. So like more or less 95% of your migration activity wise would be done. But this reorganization and this remapping and this reference checks that you'll have to do. That will constitute another for a standard project that will be a good amount of work. So as a developer, it benefits us, but like overall, that would be not much effort less than creating from scratch.
Okay, obviously, yeah. Thanks, got it.
Also the properties,
Okay.
right, Abhishek? The global variables, they have to be reorganized as properties here.
Yes, global variables, they would be reorganized as properties. So that is one thing that is good. So
Okay.
we can have these properties, and also like say you have, say I'll give you an example. So suppose you have used some global variables in BW5 process. Okay. When that process gets migrated to BW6, what they will do is not only they will create a model property, which would be similar to just equivalent to the global variables in BW5, but it will also create a process property inside the BW6 process and relate this model property and the process property. So like I'm not going too deep into this, but just to give you an overview. So here we have a lot of controls. So model property, as I said, it's this is where we define the model properties. Okay, and whatever we define, this is basically same as the global variable in BW5. So whatever we define here are applicable for the entire project. And here one project is called a module. So the properties we define here are valid for the entire module. If we want to use that properties in the process, we cannot do it because processes are sub-entities. So for using a model property in a process, we have to go through a two-step way. There is another workaround, but I'll come to that later. So as a two-step way, we have to create process properties inside this process. So if I go to this process here, I have something called process properties. So I have to create a process property, then relate the process property to a model property, which has been already defined, and then use this process property inside that activity inside that process. Okay, so I cannot directly use this model property into the inside this process activity. Okay, there is a function that we can use, but in a direct way, we have to go through this process property. So when you migrate in such a scenario, this TIBCO migration will take care of that also. That is, it will create the model property corresponding to the global variable, and also it will create a corresponding process property here, and map that process property inside the activity where that global variable you have used in Visualpath. So these sort of custom things are already taken care of in the auto migration.
Okay, so migration through this option is recommended, right? Instead of complete rewrite.
Yes, yes, definitely, because complete reorganization takes a lot of planning and a lot of effort. So much of the effort is reduced here. Only the reorganization things.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Abhishek, one more thing, for the
Yes.
BW5 only, okay, we use our generate EAR and deploy by Jenkins. Okay, so here also to
Correct.
learn the BW, does it need to know like Kubernetes or Docker or any of this thing, maybe anything that is prerequisite, or that not needed?
See, strictly speaking, for Bw6 and C, that is not required. But like the Kubernetes is required for the Bwc. Okay, so that's not part of TIBCO. But like when you are working a project and you want to deploy on cloud, usually like it depends on the clients what setup they have. Usually like what clients do is they deploy on cloud. That can be their private cloud or that can be any one of the cloud platforms, and they can use this Kubernetes, which is basically nothing but a controlling layer which controls how your cloud platform behaves. Okay, so you do not strictly need to know the Kubernetes because that is more of a setup related thing with configuration that is part of the platform team setup. Okay, but it's good to know the basics, so we'll cover the basics of them so that as a TIBCO developer you like whatever basics are needed to like deploy your code on cloud, that much you can do. But regarding the like inner concepts of this Kubernetes or by that extension the cloud platform, you do not need to go into that level unless you specifically want to like learn and be a platform administrator for the cloud. So as a TIBCO developer, you need to know the basics and basics for the cloud platform as well as the Kubernetes, both of them, as well as the Docker. Both of all three of them will cover as a part of our course.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Hi Abhishek, this is Aparna here.
Yeah, hi, Aparna.
Yeah, I need to add a point here. Actually, I completed my college this year and I'm a total fresher to TIBCO products. And I'm put
Okay.
into Bw6 and Bwc development as a part of my work. I totally understood the concept of what you said today regarding the containerization in Docker, AppSpace, and the TIBCO cloud. I kindly request you to go from the scratch part when you start with the regular session. So it would be very useful for me to catch up things
Yeah,
because I
definitely. Like,
don't.
yeah, go on, go on.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, like uh, that like we have like a similar situation in our current batch also. Like we have freshers here. So like that won't be
Okay.
a problem because I will be starting from scratch. So even if you don't know TIBCO, that won't be a problem. And always like if you have any clarifications, I'm always there to support that. Okay. So I don't think that would be a problem.
Yeah. Sure, Abhishek. Thanks.
Yeah, Aparna, yeah. Good that you brought up that point.
Yeah.
However, the
Okay.
certification, like it is 35-hour course, right? So it will take certificate also some extra.
So that certification is like voluntary. So what if you want to register for and go for certification? That's definitely we will support. So what I do is as a part of the batch, as I said, like if you're interested in certification, I will hand out those sample questions which are taken from my certification. So just incidentally, just to mention one point. So I was like Bwc and C certified in 2019, and then I had to redo my certification because it's valid for 3 years, I guess. So I had to redo the certification this year also. So I did that in April, and like in the June certification, I did a bunch of others TCS for like the TIBCO Cloud, etc. So like coming to that TCP certifications for Bw6 and C. So I'll give you the questions, sample questions, not all. Like for TCP, there are 60 questions, and you have 1.5 hours. So I'll give you around like whatever I have collected, around 30 questions. So like 50% definitely like you can expect from those question setup unless they have made like, a huge change to the question database. But like as I said, like even if you do not need to depend on the questions entirely, because whatever concepts we will be covering in the class, as far as I've seen in the question levels, it would be sufficient for you to clear the certification in the single group. But one like disclaimer here. So this certification, if you are like if your client is part of the TIBCO client, then like you will get, if your client is a TIBCO partner, then you'll get invitation to the TIBCO certification day. So they keep arranging this in every quarter, as I heard. Okay. So if you are participating as a part of the certification day, you'll get a course for your specific to your organization. and you can use that code to register and like attempt this certification free of cost. But if you are going as an individual, not part of a certification day, then for TCP, for TCA, that is the prerequisite for TCP. You have you need $100, and for the TCP it costs $300. Okay, so like just a disclaimer, but like as I said, like whatever we discuss in class, that would be sufficient to clear the exam in the first set itself. Because as we know, like most organizations, even if they reimburse you, that will be only if you successfully pass the exam. So we are aiming at clearing that exam since it's a very costly. So we aim to like enable our students so that they are comfortable enough to clear the exam in the first shot itself.
Okay. And Abhishek, how about this thing, hands-on and this thing, project?
Yeah, so project in course of our discussion, I'll give out 2 sample projects for your implementation, and the rest of the concepts, everything we will like handle we will do the hands-on for most of the concepts, and like you will learn hands-on. So after the projects that we do in class, I'll share that as well over mail, so to Visualpath, which they will share with you, and like every day you will get the like whatever classes we do, the sessions are recorded, so you'll get the links for each of the sessions, so you can refer to them anytime, and you can like go over any topic that you need.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, yeah, even this session is being recorded also, so you get to like, if you want, you can get the link as well. Okay, so anything else? I know like it's pretty late for some guys, so I'll not stretch it any further. If you have any questions, like we can discuss them. Or
Yeah,
like if you
Abhishek, I
see
didn't
that,
get your full name.
yeah, my name is Abhishek Sen. I'm from
Abhishek
Kolkata.
Sen. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Abhishek. So can we get a recording of this session?
I think so. You can contact PNMI or Visualpath, and they will provide that.
Sure, sure. All right.
Okay. Anyone? Anything else before we end?
All the sessions will be recorded and share it after the class, after the sessions,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. You will get the links, and you can access the links for a pretty long time. So you can talk to PNMI for that, but you won't lose access to that like links like even of the batch ends. So those will be cloud links, I guess. But you can like talk to PNMI more on that.
And also, what
Okay.
about the
And
installation?
anyone like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, I forgot that one. So installation. So how we will do hands-on is that if you already have access to the Bw6 and C software, that is fine. But for those who don't have, I will give out the links of TIBCO portal, where you can register and download the free versions, the trial version of these softwares, both these softwares. So they are good enough to work on and like go on with the class. You can follow the class working on that on those products. And the good thing is, even after the trial period of 30 days expires, you will still be able to use that those softwares. Okay, so it's not as if they are like you cannot access them. So you will still be able to access that. So we will use this to like go on with the class, and like you can do this to practice and whatever we are doing on the session. So you'll also learn by hands-on. So I like believe that getting your hands dirty is the best way to learn.
As a part of development, will you be covering the concepts of activities in palette library like FTP, mail services, HTTP, JMS, and all?
Yeah, I will be covering those palettes, but like since here like I will not be covering every palette in detail. Like say as you said, like HTTP, JMS, those are the most frequently used activities. So I will be definitely covering them. But as I said, like some of the activities are there, like say FTP, which are very like specifically or very rarely used. So if in case you have need, I will go in details with that. Otherwise, we'll browse to it. But we'll go through most of the all of the activity groups, And if you have specific questions regarding any particular group, or if you want me to go on a little bit detail, I will be showing them. But the reason I don't go in detail with FTP is because I don't have a corresponding setup. So whatever I show you, that won't be a hands-on. I cannot run that test and show you. Okay, but others for JMS, HTTP, I have the entire setup, so I can definitely show you from end to end.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I think I guess that's it for today. So like if you have any doubts later also, like after the session, you can get in touch with Visualpath, and they can arrange a one-to-one session for me if you need any doubts to be clarified. Okay. Okay. Thanks for joining, guys. It was a very nice interaction. So I look forward to have you in the next batch. So you can, like, if you have any specific questions, like regarding the financials, regarding anything else in the timings, or like when we are going to start, please contact Kirman. And like whenever she gets feedback from you all, she will contact me, and we can work out a common timing which suits like all of you.
Sir,
Sure.
please can you
Thanks,
give
Amitabh.
the contact number?
I don't provide my contact number. You can
how we should
contact
contact you?
Visualpath. So if you want to contact me, you have to go through Visualpath. So they will in turn either arrange a call with me, or they can mail me and I can reply to that.
Okay, so can we get the details, contact details for Visualpath?
Yeah, I think so. Kiranmai will get in touch with you probably, or
Okay.
you can leave your, like, in the chat. You can provide your details.
Yeah, I have provided the details in the chat. Thank
Okay. Yeah. Then I think Kiranmai has already noted that she will be contacting you.
you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for joining. Then have a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. This side, two questions. Okay, so in this
Yes, sir.
course, okay, that cover
Mhm.
this TIBCO BWC development only, or admin some part as well we cover?
Okay. So regarding our course, like as I said, like the ultimate aim that I would like to state is going for the certifications, right? And certification means not only, like, currently TIBCO has two levels of certifications. One is the TCA, which is a TIBCO Certified Associate. That's like lower level of certification, which covers only the basics. Next, you have the higher level, which is a TCP, a TIBCO Certified Profession, which is the ultimate certification technically in TIBCO. So our aim is to, like, enable our students to take up TCP and clear that in the first attempt itself. So for that, like TCP, speaking of TCP, so since we are dealing both with Bw6 and C, both of them have a common TCA, but different TCPs. So you have one TCP for Bw6, one TCP for Bwc. Okay. So since our aim is to clear those TCPs, so we cover not only the development. So development wise, Bw6 and C are almost same, 95% same. The 5% difference I'll point out. But the major part of Bw6 and C TCP covers their individual deployments. So for Bw6, we have extensive questions coming from the admin area, that is the app space deployment. While for Bwc, we have a like huge amount of question coming from the cloud deployment area on Docker, on the Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So since we are aiming to clear both of those, so we cover both the development in detail, as well as the administration part of Bw6, as well as the cloud deployment parts of Bwc. But one disclaimer, so for the cloud deployment part of Bwc, for Bw6 administration, I can show you from start to end because I have the local setup, there is no issue. But for Bwc deployment, for cloud deployment, I won't be able to do end to end. I can explain you the steps, I can give you the steps one by one, but I won't be able to show you hands-on. First of all, because like recreating the Docker image would be like that takes a lot of time, and secondly, deployment on the cloud platforms needs like this subscription. So I have already like registered 2 of my credit cards, so I don't have any more. So maybe I won't be able to show you the final deployment, but step by step and like whatever steps you need to follow, that definitely I will show. So as a part of our course, we'll not only be covering TIBCO only, but as I said, for Bwc deployment, we will be covering a bit of Docker, a bit of image creation, and a bit of AWS as well, to show the sample like the deployment cloud platform. Okay, and also touching parts of Kubernetes.
Okay, one more thing, Abhishek. Like for this,
Yes.
we need to know BW means you are going to tell BW5 first or 6, or directly you can start with BW6.
No, we will start with Bw6 only. So for Bw5, like first of all, this course is not for Bw5. Secondly, TIBCO has outdated the certification for Bw5, so they have removed the support. So all existing clients of Bw5 are being told to migrate to 6 or C. So that is why like we don't have any need for learning Bw5. Wherever there is a need to be compared, I will do that. But you don't really need to understand Bw5. You can start directly with Bw6 and C.
Okay, so I have experienced BW5. Okay, so how is it difficult to learn BW6?
If you know Bw5, I would say it will be pretty easy. The development concepts more or less like are same, but the way that is implemented may be different.
Okay, got it.
But as I said, like if you have an understanding of Bw5, it should be easy.
Okay, fine, got it.